You're listening to the Journey Podcast. Can holistic health and functional medicine lead to a more balanced and vibrant life? Listen to today's episode to learn about the potential of combining these approaches for a comprehensive and holistic approach to well-being. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Journey Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we delve into the powerful synergy between holistic health and functional medicine, unveiling a comprehensive approach to well-being. Our discussion centers around the integration of these two approaches, addressing the interconnected aspects of holistic health to achieve optimal vitality. Our conversation explores how holistic health and functional medicine collaborate to consider the physical, emotional, and lifestyle elements that impact well-being. By focusing on root causes rather than alleviating symptoms, this approach empowers individuals to take charge of their health journey. Nicole Ritter is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, board-certified holistic health practitioner, and holistic nutritionist with over 6 years of experience helping women and children get to the root causes of their health issues. Let's meet Nicole Ritter. Hi, Nicole. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because holistic health and functional medicine are such relevant topics for holistic healing. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Do you want to share a little bit about yourself and how you actually got into what you're doing now and how that connects to your own story?
Yeah, so I actually got into this field because I was so sick. I grew up a really sick child. I caught every illness under the sun, including scarlet fever. I had scarlet fever, which I didn't even know that people got. And I ended up on like 7 different medications, including allergy medicine. I had sinus infections, chronic migraines. I had really bad anxiety and depression. And like I said, I just got sick all the time. So I tried everything. I tried every single specialist. I had like 6 different doctors, and I didn't really know what holistic health was. Functional medicine, maybe it was a thing, but this was before Instagram, before you could Google anything. And I actually found black mold in my house in 2017. I remediated it myself, which I do not suggest you do, because that's not a good idea. And then I ended up moving out of that house and started on a journey towards my holistic healing. I got tons of different certifications. I ran so many different labs on myself. I really became my own lab rat. And I'm happy to say now that I've been able to get off all those medications. I have no more anxiety, I have migraines if I eat gluten, but don't have migraines anymore. I don't have chronic sinus infections. My depression has completely gone away. I mean, I think being moody when you have a 2-year-old sometimes is normal, but my depression is just night and day from when it used to be. Now I help clients heal holistically, doing very similar things that I did for myself.
Wow, what a journey. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm curious when we say functional medicine. So what does that actually do? What is functional medicine? Why is it called functional? And what do you do when you work with someone in the field of functional medicine?
Yeah. So functional medicine looks at the body as a whole. So there's a time and a place for modern medicine, Western medicine. I always say if you have a heart attack or you break your arm or you're gushing blood, don't call me because I don't know what to do, right? Go to your doctor. But what has happened in Western medicine is it's very reductionist. So they reduce it to that body part, right? So if it's a hormone disorder, you go to an endocrinologist. If it's a gut problem, you go to a gastroenterologist. the body's all connected, right? We're one person, we're a whole. So that's really what functional medicine looks at. It looks at your body as a whole, mind, body, soul, what you're putting in your body, what's going on inside, but also external factors like work stress, environmental toxins, like how are you talking to your body? Do you have this negative self-talk? It's everything. And then you're really looking at how the body functions, which is why it's called functional, right? And you're trying to correct the functions in the body and maintain or get that balance back into the body. I truly believe everyone's body has the ability to heal. It just needs the right tools in order to do so.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective. And I love the holistic approach where we don't separate the body from all of the different organs or even from the mind. And we look at it as one functional and interconnected being. So yeah, I love that. Now, you worked on yourself for your mental health as well, working on depression and anxiety. So how does functional medicine work not only I'm looking, more the physical parts, but also the mental challenges that people deal with. How do you address those?
It's hard to address just with functional medicine. I think that that's when you need to work with a team. My mom is a therapist. I believe in therapy. I love breath work for mental health. Breath work for me released trauma that was stored in my body that I didn't even know I had. It was incredible. So I think working with the team is very important for mental health and a lot of other things. But with functional medicine, the gut and the brain are very interconnected. They're connected via the vagus nerve. So if you have gut issues, you most likely will have anxiety or depression or some type of, I don't want to call it disorder, but like some kind of mental, I don't even know what I'm trying to say here, but something is going to be impacted because of the gut, right? So addressing gut health is going to help with your mental health. So that is always first and foremost, but also just getting the body back to functioning and lowering inflammation, right? So there's been a lot of research about mental illness and neuroinflammation, which is brain inflammation. So figuring out where that inflammation is coming from. I see a lot of mold illness in my clients. Mold is actually lipophilic, so it's fat loving, and it travels to the fattiest part of our body, which happens to be our brain, right? So if we have mold, which is causing inflammation and oxidative stress in our brain, talk therapy is not going to do much, right? We can't talk our way out of mold illness. So that's where getting to the actual root cause of what's causing that inflammation, addressing it, helping the body detox, and then nourishing the body with proper nutrients is so important. I do food analysis on all of my clients. I don't think anyone eats enough. It's so interesting because some people eat a lot of calories, but they're nutrient poor, right? So if you're eating fast food, that's not, not shaming you by any means, but I love educating clients. That's devoid of nutrients, and our body needs protein, fat, carbohydrates, and micronutrients like vitamins and minerals in order to properly function. So things like mental illness, even like brain fog, like being lethargic, if you don't feel well, it's hard to have a positive mindset and to be super happy all the time. So just figuring out what's causing all of these different things and then addressing them while working with a team who knows, the mental health side of things is super important.
Yeah, I never actually thought of mold illness impacting mental health. That's such an interesting thing that you mentioned. Is that very common with the clients that you see?
Yes. So it is very common. It is something that I didn't used to test for in the beginning of my practice. I tested, I did blood work, I did hair tissue mineral analysis and GI stool map. A lot of people get better with that, but those are very like entry level labs, I would say. And if someone has a chronic illness, and I would consider anxiety and depression a chronic illness, you have to figure out what's causing that inflammation, like I said. So I see mold all the time, like more than I don't like seeing mold, but it is good when we find it because then we can actually address it. There was a study that came out and that said 50% of homes in the US and the UK have visible mold growth. I know just when I was in Europe, like I told you, I was in Europe in June, I could feel it. I could feel when I was in a moldy building, my heart starts to have heart palpitations. I get very anxious and I react very highly to mold. I'm very sensitive. So not everyone will have that reaction. But if you're constantly inhaling mold, if you either see it or it's in your workplace, that's getting in your body. And mold creates what's called mycotoxins, which are mold toxins, which are massively inflammatory and massively immunosuppressive. So not only are they causing that inflammation, they're suppressing your immune system. So you're going to be more likely to get sick, like from a common cold or COVID or the flu or something like that. So yeah, unfortunately, I see it a lot.
Yeah, as you're talking, I'm looking around the room and I'm going, okay, can I see any mold here? So that is incredible. And is this reversible? So like when you work with clients, do they get better? Or when you have mold illness, is that something that stays in your body forever?
So mold can colonize in your sinuses and in your gut. I believe everyone can get better, but it depends on their situation. So if you're living in mold, you're constantly re-exposing yourself to those mold toxins. It's really hard to heal when you're living in the environment that you got sick in. If the person is able to get out or remediate, or, some people even do like an Airbnb for a month while they're figuring out their situation, they are able to heal. But healing from mold takes a really long time. You have to be really patient. Protocols start at 6 months and then we retest. But I've been working with my sister who's diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. She had crazy high levels of mold. The specific strain of mold that she had causes brain lesions, which, if you know anything about multiple sclerosis, it's lesions in your brain. So we've been working together for 3 years since her initial diagnosis. She's been able to reverse some of her brain lesions. They've stopped growing and her mold has significantly decreased, but she still is showing signs of mold in her body. And that's been 3 years. So she had a very large exposure. She lived in Charleston. It's very humid there. She believes that there was mold in her last apartment. So every situation is unique and different. But it is something that I do think is missed in a lot of medical, even like medical literature. There's a ton of research on mold impacting animals. There's not a lot of human studies. I think there's probably like 5 human studies because we know how massively immunosuppressive mold is. So we can't study it on humans because we're hurting them, right? It's not helping them at all. But a lot of the animal studies, if you just go on PubMed and search mycotoxins and animals, there's studies on cattle because it impacts the health of the cattle and the livestock. So a lot of farmers are aware of mold prevention and how to prevent mold in their animals, but doctors aren't taught that, right? There are some doctors that are shoemaker trained, which is mold trained, but it's not as well known as I think it should be.
Wow. I had no idea that this was such a huge topic. And especially, I think living in Europe and many of the old buildings, right? It's a common thing, especially if you live in a very humid area by the coast. There's mold everywhere and no one even talks about whether that's good or bad. So yeah, that's quite eye-opening. And any other things that you see a lot in your clients other than mold illness, anything that crops up sort of more often than other things where you say, wow, this is really interesting because it's becoming a bit of a trend, or I'm seeing this a lot?
Mineral imbalances. So minerals are the spark plugs of life. They are so important. We can't live without them and our body doesn't create them. So we have to get them from food. And unfortunately, just because of modern farming and agriculture, we live in a mineral depleted world, especially over here. France might be a little bit better, but over here, it's pretty much mineral depleted. So I see a lot of low magnesium, low sodium and potassium, and sodium and potassium are so important. Sodium has been demonized throughout history, but it's pure sodium from like Celtic sea salt is so important. It helps to create hydrochloric acid, which is stomach acid. So if we have low sodium, we usually have low stomach acid. So then we're going to not be able to digest and absorb our food. So then that is just like a cascade of anything that can happen, right? We can have gut issues, we can have bloating, we can have constipation, and that can even lead to nutrient deficiencies, which can lead to neurotransmitter deficiencies, which can lead to mental illness. So it's truly all connected, which is why it's so important to look at all these different things. But I don't think anyone has ever had like a perfect mineral lab.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not surprising also considering the kinds of food we eat and often having to substitute convenience for something better because we don't have time or we don't have the budget. So yeah, I can see that becoming a real concern also going forward. So yeah. And you mentioned your sister, and do you work with clients who have chronic pain as well or have chronic illnesses? And how does functional medicine work with that?
So chronic illness, yes. So I specialize in chronic illness, and I don't, every business coach is like, put a niche, but because it's functional medicine and the diagnosis isn't the problem, it's the result of the problem. So I didn't want to pigeonhole myself into just helping one person or one type of person, because if a person has chronic pain or fibromyalgia or multiple sclerosis, they could have the same root cause. But if 5 people with IBS could have 5 different root causes. So functional medicine helps with chronic pain in a number of different ways, right? Chronic pain can be caused from inflammation. So figure out where the inflammation is coming from. If it's a structural thing, or like I got hit by a car when I was little and I have a rod in my arm that hurts chronically, I can't help. Functional medicine can't help with that. So that's something where it's case by case basis, but just helping the body lower the inflammation is going to do wonders. Can you completely reverse any disease? Maybe not, but I think you can get almost everyone at least 80% better so that they can function on a day-to-day basis and live a normal life. Because chronic illness in and of itself is debilitating. It's sad and it's lonely because a lot of people, myself included, have been said, oh, this is in your head. Like, just go to a therapist. You're stressed. Or I have a 2-year-old. My hormones were crazy after I gave birth, and I went to the doctor just for a checkup, and they were like, well, it's normal. You're a mom, you're stressed. That's not nice to say.
And not very helpful.
No, it's not, it's not helpful. So just really like something that my clients always say to me is that, wow, I've never been heard, because we don't get a lot of time when we're seeing medical professionals. And I meet with clients between 30 minutes to an hour, and then they have messaging with me, like unlimited messaging during business hours. And I think the main part of my job is just to listen to them and hear what they're going through, and then try to put the puzzle pieces together of what could be causing it. I don't even remember your question.
We were talking about chronic pain and functional medicine, which I think you very nicely wrapped into your answer.
My long-winded answers.
Yeah, it just goes to show that really everything is connected, right? So when you're talking about the gut, you're talking about inflammation. We're also talking about physical components that go into all of that. So yeah, it's like a giant puzzle that you're trying to put the pieces together for. So,
right.
Yeah. Well, I like the holistic approach of the functional medicine. So I'm very curious, like, what kind of things can you do with functional medicines? Is there like tests that you run, or you mentioned lab tests? And so what kind of things can people expect if they work with a functional medicine practitioner?
So everyone is different. Every practitioner is different depending on what they can do. Most of us order lab tests. So blood work that you can get from your doctor. Usually I look at it from a different lens. So usually they're used to diagnose disease, and you only talk to someone about it if the numbers are crazy high or crazy low. So what we do is we look at it from a clinical correlation perspective, and we clinically correlate the highs or the lows with B1 deficiency, low hydrochloric acid, poor protein intake. And it's really cool and eye-opening just to look at blood from like a clues perspective. And then I usually look at the blood, and then depending on the results of the blood work, I suggest further labs. So a GI stool map, it's so humbling. You poop in a little hot dog tray and you send it off to the lab. That is something that is going to test for H. pylori, candida, parasites, and then it tests for like steatocrit, so fecal fat. So it shows if we're processing and absorbing fat from our food, and it shows a couple other intestinal markers, which are super important. And then mineral analysis. So it's super easy. I do a hair test, and you send it to the lab, and it shows us on average, a 3-month look back of the mineral status in your body. The minerals are always going to be normal on blood work unless you like drank way too much, I don't know, something with sodium, your sodium super elevated. Because if you think about the blood, your blood is in transit. So those minerals, most of the minerals in our body are intracellular. So the blood is transporting them sorry for this weird thing, but the blood is transporting them like into the cell. So we're looking, if you think about your hair, it's dead skin cells. So we're looking on average of the look back of the mineral status from the last 3 months. It's always going to be different than blood work. Almost every single panel, there's sodium, magnesium, potassium on blood work, and it's usually normal, but the client doesn't feel normal. And most clients come to me and they're like, oh my gosh, my labs have been normal. I feel horrible. I don't know what's going on. So that's why we do these functional tests. And there's so many, I could talk for 5 hours about functional labs, but there's mold testing, organic acid testing, heavy metals, environmental toxins, methylation, which is huge. Methylation is a biochemical process that happens in our liver. It helps our body detox. It has like 100 different functions, and a lot of people can't properly methylate. So checking on how the methylation cycle is running and if they need support on that, and then whatever else is needed. So there's a lot, but it just depends on the person.
I love how passionate you are about all of this. I
love it.
Tell that you're just in your element here. And, I'm sure that you pass that passion on to your clients and are able to really support them through their healing journey with your knowledge and your wisdom about all of this. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. This has been really interesting. Now, you mentioned to me before we started recording also that very often there are lifestyle changes involved when people come to see you and they want to begin their healing journey. So is there something to be said maybe for people who might be a little bit hesitant or scared to come see a functional medicine practitioner because they think they'll have to change everything about their lives or maybe even move house and stop eating everything they like? Is there a way that you can approach this and sort of ease it into what works for you and go from there and still have some healing?
Yes and no. So it depends on the client. So if someone comes to me with an autoimmune disease and, pretty intense lab markers, I'm just very honest with clients. I'm going to say, hey, you need to eliminate certain foods. Your body needs a break from the inflammatory foods so that it has time to heal. So I always start with 90 days I don't do a strict elimination unless they really need it. But number one, I always tell everyone to get rid of gluten just because it's so inflammatory. It can lead to leaky gut, which can lead to just inflammatory cascade, which can lead to an autoimmune disease. So I don't tend to work with people who feel good. Most people don't feel well. So if someone came to me and they're like, oh, I feel great, I just want labs, I wouldn't make them change everything. It's so hard to say. It just depends on the person. But I do meet people where they're at. And with talking about toxic products, I educate a lot. I actually have a course that all my clients get access to that's just information and education that I think is important to know. And in the toxin module, I talk about don't get rid of everything in your house. If you are using Febreze and just all this stuff that creates a toxic burden in your body, finish it, even though I would love them to throw it away, but finish that product and then buy something that's less toxic or non-toxic. Luckily, there's so many options, but they're more expensive. So that too, it has to fit within your budget and it has to be realistic, because when you think you're on a strict diet or you think your lifestyle is too strict, you're not living life to the fullest. And I think that joy in life and loving food is one of the most important parts of healing. I love food. I love life. I told you I was at a concert last night. I really do live life to the fullest because I feel good. Now, when I was chronically sick, I couldn't do that. And I missed out on a ton of things. So I'm just gung-ho about living life, but within, I don't eat gluten. I don't really eat out unless it's a special occasion because I can't control what's in the food. We cook almost every single meal at home. We barely eat takeout, and that does save us money because we're cooking everything at home. But like I said, depends on the person, depends on their labs, but I try to work with people within their means, their budget, and in their mindset, because mindset is huge as well.
Yeah. And then it becomes a lot more, like you said, realistic and sustainable for the client as well, if they're feeling like that fits how they want to live and who they want to be. So yeah, that's fascinating. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your programs and services so that if listeners have found alignment in this episode and they want to work with you, so let's tell them a little bit about how they can work with you.
Yeah, I'd love that. So I have two options right now. I work with children and adults. Like I said, it doesn't really matter what you're dealing with as long as you want to find root causes and heal. So I have a 4-month option. That's like the starter option that most people enroll with. They get access to my course, unlimited messaging. I do have a team of practitioners. I actually just hired a past client who became a functional medicine practitioner because she loves it so much. So you'll always be working with me, but I do have a team that helps on the back end just so that I can help more people. And then most people actually work with me between 6 months to a year. So I do like the starter introductory 4 months just to give you a little taste. And then most people just keep renewing. I have clients, like I said, who've been working with me for like 2 to 3 years. And then I have a mold package that if you do think you are dealing with mold, that's specifically what we deal with, because if you do have mold, that's the first thing that needs to be dealt with. So that starts at 6 months. Most people work with me with mold for years. So that starts at 6 months and we just work on mold. And then after the mold is dealt with, we work on whatever else. You can actually enroll on my website. So I do complimentary discovery calls. I love connecting with people and talking to them, but most people just go on my website, sign up, and then we get started. As long as it's not the weekend, we get started the next day.
And do you work with people in the US only, or can other people internationally connect with you as well? And what are the limitations? Because I'm guessing with some of the blood tests or lab tests, there might be limitations if it's international.
Yeah, so I can order almost all labs except for blood work anywhere in the world. I do have a client in Dubai. It's incredibly difficult to get supplements to Dubai. It's not impossible, but it's just expensive. And then most European companies I can work with. I have a new client from Germany. Canada is actually pretty difficult to work with because they have super heavy restrictions on supplements. So getting supplements are a big part. They're not the only thing that will help people heal, but they are a big part of my protocols. So that's where there's, if I can't get certain supplements, then I can't help the people how they need to be helped.
Yeah, that makes sense. But there's still the consultation with you that people can do, and also many of the other tests that you can order for them. So yeah, that sounds fantastic. And we will be linking to all of Nicole's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there on how you can get in touch with her, how you can book into the sessions with her or the programs, and how you can start on your healing journey if you want to work with Nicole on functional medicine. Well, this has been an incredible episode, and I really hope our listeners have enjoyed this journey into holistic health and functional medicine as much as I have. I have learned so much in the last half hour, I can't even tell you. So it has been fantastic chatting with you today, Nicole. Thank you so much for bringing your passion and your wisdom to this episode today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. I hope we get to do this again. I'm sure there's lots more things that we could talk about when it comes to functional medicine and healing. So we can definitely explore that again. Thank you so much.
I'd love to. Of course. Thank you.
Take care, Nicole. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Journey podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Journey on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejourney.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.